All right, Danielle, we are with week 4 of W Hoops basketball, women's basketball podcast by two Hoosiers who love watching and talking about basketball, especially women's basketball and specifically the Indiana Fever. So this week we had a couple of games for the Fever. It was good, got 2 wins without Caitlin Clark being able to play. So some good positive things, I think, but maybe some not so positive things as well that we can talk about. So maybe we can start with the positives. What did you think about the games this week?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest change was McDonald. That was a great hardship signing. We're UConn fans, so don't really think very fondly of her from beating UConn in the Final Four in 21, but um, she was really what they've been lacking. Someone to kind of get the pace going faster, distribute the ball, kind of make things happen. And then being pesky on defense also. So she has really been good. She jumped right in. I think she played over 20 minutes both games and really contributed and impacted the game a lot. So that was encouraging to see.
Yeah, I agree. It was a great signing. I was really surprised how well she did on defense. I was very concerned about having Mitchell and her in the backcourt at the same time. Like, would teams take advantage of it? But it didn't seem like either team really did too much.
Right.
And so, yeah, she is a great signing. We can talk maybe a little bit later. We wanted to talk some about roster construction, maybe about kind of the future and what can or can't be. But yeah, being a UConn fan, I wouldn't have thought this a month ago, but boy, I hope they can keep her long term.
Right. Yeah. Another positive is I think just Lexie Hall has continued. She was so good last year post Olympic break, and it's kind of like, is this an exception or is this what Lexie Hall can
Hmm.
be in the right environment, with the right pieces around her? And so far, she's leading the league in 3-point percentage, and she is top 5 in just field goal percentage, and just makes the right move. Moves well off the ball, and makes just a lot of little hustle plays that really impact winning.
Yeah, I mean, we love watching her play. She plays hard on defense. She attacks the glass on offense, even though she's, you know, not a big three. She'd be a good size two, but she plays a lot of three for the Fever, and she's just very aggressive going after the ball. She has a good nose for loose balls, for rebounds, and just a smart defender, kind of a glue player who also is a great shooter. So, yeah, you kept saying this week, I think, you give her all the money because
Yep,
she's going to be a free
better
agent.
next year.
Yeah, yeah. So I think she looked great this week, and yeah, hope that that can keep up. Anything else for you on the positive side?
I mean, it's a little bit related to Ari McDonald, but even Sydney Colson looked much better in these two games than she did when Caitlin went out right away. I think she hit a three to start the game off pretty much, and we're just like, well, that feels like bonus points anytime if you're getting production from
Right.
Colson, and then let alone McDonald. And there was a point maybe towards the end of the first half where you had gotten, I think, 1 3 from Colson, 2 3s from McDonald, and then a shot clock beating 3 from Howard, and it felt like those were all kind of bonus points, and that was almost the margin in the game. Those It was maybe a 15-point game at that point. And those were points they weren't getting the first couple games Caitlin was out. So other people
Yeah.
stepping up is important.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. There those that Chicago game, they definitely had some good three-point shooting from some unexpected sources. A couple other things that I would note. I've got some negatives to say as well, but I was impressed with Howard's defense on Reese in
Yeah.
battling the boards. I thought Howard matched up really well with Reese. I mean, Reese is long and athletic and just moves a lot, to get rebounds. And I thought Howard played really well. And yeah, Colson, I agree. She was good. She kind of got knocked around some, but still hung in there. She had some cotton up her nose or something, and was really just came back into the game and gave them some really valuable minutes this week. in spite of some tough things. And then Boston continues to just shoot really well, and
Yep.
that's a very positive from her. So we got some real positive. Just getting 2 wins this week was
Yeah.
important, and I think they're undefeated in the Commissioners Cup
They are.
officially. So yeah, so
It's
a
going to be
good,
tough to take New York on for that, but yeah,
yeah,
that's a good start for sure.
yeah, but yeah,
Another positive is just the assist numbers. They ended up with 20 assists
yes,
on 27 made field goals, and without Caitlin, that's a pretty impressive thing. I'm looking at the box score, and everyone had at least one assist except for Timson, who only got 3 minutes. So that's great just to be moving the ball well.
yeah, I agree. That was a positive I had written down as well. So they seem to be just sharing the ball really well and had a little better understanding of how to, just move the ball and share the ball without Caitlin having to be the center of everything. So they've seems like they've adjusted a little bit. It's taken them a couple of games, but they've kind of settled in. So what about some negatives? I've got a few things that I'd like to see change, and some things that maybe just one-offs that were negatives. But what
Mhm.
are some thoughts you had?
I think for Aaliyah Boston, the foul trouble has consistently been an issue, and some of it is just the refs being bad. But in the game against Washington, she picked up her third. She was about to come out of the game, I think, even, and she picked up her third on a very illegal moving screen. Like she like took a couple steps and leaned over. And you can't do that when you have two fouls in the second quarter. And sometimes it seems like she gets a little frustrated with that. And she's still a young player. She's in her third year of her rookie contract, but that's something you can blame the refs all you want. But if this is consistently an issue, you have to figure out a way to adjust and keep yourself in the game.
Yeah, I agree. And I'd like to talk about Boston a little bit more broadly about how they can use her. But another negative that I saw, especially in the game yesterday against Chicago, is Colson. As much as she brought a lot of positives, boy, her passes, even when she makes the right pass, she's not getting it in the right spot for the shooter. Or
Hmm.
it's people are just struggling. She's throwing it low or high or like not getting it where somebody can just catch and shoot or catch and drive and do something. Like people are fumbling to catch the
Yeah.
ball because it's just she's making the right decisions on passes, but the execution has been bad on where she's throwing the passes to, and she's got to clean that up. I think
Yeah.
that was one thing. And then, well, in that game against Washington, I showed you this last night. There was 1 minute in the first quarter. It was almost exactly 60 seconds where Howard just had a terrible quarter, and I don't know if it was or terrible 60 seconds where on one possession she fell down trying to grab I don't remember, it was a loose ball or an offensive rebound and just couldn't corral the loose ball that led to kind of a bucket in transition for Washington. Then she took the ball and tried to dribble the length of the court and missed a layup in transition, which you and I are both just shaking our heads like, what's she doing? She should never be trying to do a one-man fast break.
Hmm.
Um, and then she had another one where she just was dribbling in transition and got the ball. She just lost the ball. She just didn't even get to the rim. Just lost the ball in transition. So it was like two possessions back to back where she was trying to bring the ball up the court in transition. And then the fourth one is another transition where she got into the corner and I don't remember, somebody passed it to her and she was wide open in the corner and she hit the side of the backboard. And it's
Yeah.
like 60 seconds of like four of the worst offensive possessions a player could possibly have in such a short span of time. And Washington got back in the game and thankfully pulled it out. But that was kind of whew, is she hurt? What was going on there? And,
Yeah. I
it's
don't,
just,
so I haven't heard anything official, but I have noticed it feels like her minutes have been fairly low, and then she's on the bench with like a back brace. I don't know if it's a heating thing or what. So it does feel like there's something going on with her.
yeah, it seems like it. But I did think in the Chicago game, I thought much more positive from her. She hit a three and just played good defense on
Yeah.
Angel, I thought, and so that was positive. So then I guess the point on Boston, I'd like to spend a few minutes talking specifically about her, as we've been talking about. She leads the league in field goal percentage, but
Significantly by like 6 points or something.
doesn't get very many attempts. And I know, I mean, historically, you look at players who lead the league in field goal percentage are usually low volume people who are very selective in their shots, and they bigs who get a lot of rebounds or something and have layups. But Boston's a very skilled offensive player. You don't want
Mhm.
her to be a low volume shooter. And yet it seems like the way Indiana's offense is run, that it's almost like they become totally dependent on Caitlin Clark to create offensive opportunities for Aaliyah, and otherwise, like her shot attempts in the games without Caitlin, she had she was 4 for 5 in the first game, 8 for 10, which is good. Ten attempts is not bad, but then 5 for 5 and 4 for 7. And when your leading scorer is out, your second leading scorer can't be only taking 5 shots in a game.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's not enough for sure. And they even talked about it in the game against Chicago. The coach was talking about it. They're aware of it, and it seems like they're saying that they're trying to get her more touches, but it's not happening. Some of that is probably just the foul trouble where she's been out for portions of the game. But then even in the game against Chicago, there were a few times where she had the ball in the paint and didn't take a shot and passed it out instead. And sometimes that's leading to assists. Like one time that was a Lexie three, and there's no complaining about that. But
right.
I think she's probably leading the team in assists with Caitlin out. She had 5 against Chicago. So she's a good facilitator, but you do need um, more buckets from her for sure.
Yeah, I mean, so I was looking at some numbers, comparing, since they just played Chicago last night, comparing Boston's numbers to Cardoso and to Angel Reese. And so just kind of run through these real quickly. You know, so Boston is averaging 29 minutes a game. Reese is averaging 28.7. So essentially exact same number of minutes per game. And Cardoso 22 minutes a game. The field goal attempts are almost dead even though Cardoso is playing only 22 minutes a game, almost 7 minutes less than Reese in Boston. 9.8 field goal attempts for Aaliyah, 9 for Cardoso, and 9.7 for Reese. So Boston and Reese, minutes played and field goals attempted are almost exactly the same. Then the field goal percentage is, Boston 67%, Cardoso's about 51%, and Reese is 31%. So, a lot of Reese's attempts are probably high because, she gets offensive rebounds and creates second shots for herself, which is, her elite skill is rebounding. But I mean, Boston is so much better of a shooter than Angel Reese. You've got to be getting more than 9.8 field goal attempts for her. And one thing you observed in the game last night against Chicago was there were multiple occasions where all of a sudden Kelsey Mitchell was guarding one of Chicago's bigs in the lane. And so what did you see going on there?
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple times where they got switches and um, yeah, I that might have happened more after Sloot went down with an injury, if
Hmm.
I recall right. Because I don't know, it's yeah,
Yeah, I think it
yeah,
was in the second half more that we noticed it.
yeah. So yeah, but it seems like they were able to get switches and try to like intentionally do that more than Indiana was for sure.
Yeah, and I'd like to see Indiana, a couple of notes I made were, um, Chicago was able to do that, to get some mismatches and get, post passes into their bigs. And, you know, is does Indiana not just not have anybody who knows how to make a post entry pass? I mean,
Yeah.
seems like they're totally dependent on dribble handoffs and pick and rolls to get the ball to Aaliyah, as opposed to
Mhm.
just some simple back screen. Like Chicago, I think was just doing back screens, just having a guard come up instead of have the big up high, have a guard set a back screen, and then Indiana switched, and all of a sudden Kelsey Mitchell was on Cardoso, and it's like the Indiana defense is in a panic mode at that point. And you could do cross screens. I mean, two bigs doing cross screens. I mean, there are just ways to get bigs open. And one other note
Mhm.
I had, like, if you're going to have two non-shooters, essentially, like when you have Boston and Howard playing together, you're happy if either one of them takes a three, if you're the
Sure.
defense, right? So why I'd like to see Indiana maybe try to do a little three out and two in. Boston's such a good passer. Put her in the high post some
Yeah.
and try to run some things, some old school three out, two in, and not think you have to play everything five out.
Yeah, there was a good stretch of the game against Chicago where Boston's just floating out at the top of the 3-point line, and that doesn't feel like the most effective space for her to be in.
Yeah, I mean, especially without Caitlin. I mean, with Caitlin there, you can do some pick and rolls, you can do some
Yeah.
dribble handoffs, and that works really well with the two of them. But
Yeah. But
I'd
I would
still
like
like,
to see a little bit more of like Kelsey and Aaliyah getting some actions going with the two of them. Because if you have Kelsey and Aaliyah and then Caitlin comes back and you have those three on the same side of the floor, uh, that's tough to guard.
yeah, I mean, I would love to see all kinds of have Kelsey Mitchell set some back screens for
Yeah.
Boston, or Caitlin even set a back screen,
Yeah.
and then use and when the defense sees Caitlin running out towards the 3-point line after setting a back screen for Leah, I mean, there's
Yeah.
it seems like there's so many more creative things they could potentially do to free up Aaliyah
Yeah.
in the half court offense. So just some observations. She's a skilled passer. She's a great shooter. You've got to figure out a way, Indiana coaching staff, figure out a way to get more good looks for Aaliyah.
Yeah.
Don't depend
And
totally on dribble handoffs and pick and rolls.
I'd like to see a few more shots for Lexie also from three. She's leading the country in 3-point percentage, and she's only taking 2.5 a game, so her
Yeah.
percentage would probably come down if she took five, but why not have her take five and see if she can hit half of them?
Yeah, have some actions where Lexi's on the wing, the same side as Aaliyah in the post. And
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so many creative things you could do. If you have, I mean, you think about, you have Caitlin and Bonner and Lexi on the perimeter. And you got those are three dangerous 3-point shooters. You've got to respect Bonner, even if she's not shooting
Yeah.
particularly well this season. Maybe you've got to teams are going to respect her. So,
Yep.
I mean, there just feels like there are a lot of opportunities to get more creative on the offensive end, and I would love to see that.
Yeah, for sure.
So, nonetheless, in spite of the negatives, it was an overall good week. You got two wins.
Yep.
So one thing we did want to talk about um, before we get into the what were they thinking segment was kind of the roster construction for Indiana. And you found out about a rule that seems baffling related to hardship signings.
Hmm. Yeah. Basically, if she's signed on a hardship contract, she can only be on that contract as long as they're under 10 players who are healthy, which they are right now, with Cunningham and Clark out. And she can stay, she's on a rest of season hardship contract, which means as long as they're under 10, she can be there. But it is eating into their cap space, which pushes back the idea at the beginning of the season was about midway through the season, they'd have the cap space to sign a 12th player. But at this point, Aries eating into that cap space every day by being there. Um, but also, they can't switch her contract to a full season contract without releasing her. And if they release her, um, they would have to wait 10 days before they could sign her again. This is from her Hoop Stats, Richard Cohen. But basically, that means another team could and probably would swoop her up in those 10 days. And why wouldn't they?
Yeah, and that's a real shame because she seems like a great fit. Indiana likes to play fast. They like to get out and get up and down the court, and they need another point guard.
They
They
do.
just Caitlin is great, but having Colson as the only backup point guard is not a good situation.
No.
So you had also noted on the roster construction that they have a huge, what feels like an imbalance for the front court on the Fever
Yeah,
roster.
very much so. They have seven players who play the four, and some of them can play the four and the five, or some the three and the four. So you have Boston and Howard and Dantas who can all play the four or the five. Um, then you have Bonner and Cunningham who can kind of be three, four. And then you have Turner and Timpson who can really only play the four. Um, and then they only really have Clark and Colson at the point guard position. So yeah, it doesn't seem like you need that many fours. So it's in theory, it seems like you kind of have to cut Turner to make room for McDonald, but with the way the rules are, it's not that simple. And Turner
Mm.
hasn't been getting minutes. I think she has potential to contribute, but they haven't been playing her. And you'd rather keep a rookie in Timpson, who's kind of that same type of player, and develop her and have her on the same timeline as Clark and Boston. So it's a tough situation.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. And maybe Turner could sprain her ankle in practice and go
Right.
on the injured list, and they could keep McDonald for a while to balance out the roster. But yeah, if that rule, as we understand it, is correct, that's a just doesn't make sense. They should, I
Yeah.
mean, Indiana did a good job finding a replacement and somebody who'd really benefit their team
Yeah.
long term, and it just seems like a silly rule that
Yeah.
you can't. The rest of the league's going to get a shot at her now for 10 days if they have to let her go. So it's unfortunate because
Yeah, I don't
they
know who
could
that
really use her.
benefits. Basically, it prevents the team who found a good hardship player from re-signing them, but why? I don't get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Maybe that's a good segue into what were they thinking segment. Yeah, that rule. What were they thinking when they made that rule?
Yeah.
But did you have any what were they thinking
I mean, I think
comments
we kind
for
of already discussed like just not getting Boston paint touches seems like a pretty big miss. But then yesterday they had a huge lead against Chicago. And they weren't playing Timpson. You have a rookie at the end of the bench, and you had a 30-point lead most of the second half. You could have easily given Timpson 10 minutes there and rested Howard with her back issues or whatever's going on with her. So that's a little bit disappointing.
that's a really good one. I don't know what they're thinking. A lot of coaches are reluctant to play rookies, I know, but yeah, when
The
you got a 30
the
point
only
lead,
def
what's the
the
point?
only defense for this game is that it's a Commissioner Cup game, and the margin of victory does matter if it ends up being a tie.
Mm, yeah,
So that's the only thing that you can really, and New York blew Connecticut out of the water completely. But so you're not going to catch up. They beat Connecticut by 48. You're not catching New York in a point differential if it comes to that.
right, right, yeah.
Um, so that's a
But
tough one.
it is, but still, the commissioner, you got to think bigger than the commissioner's cup. There's
Yeah,
a whole team development and future development for Timpson if she's going to contribute to the franchise long term.
yeah,
That's a really good one. For me, uh, it was in the game last night. We often complain about the officiating in the WNBA. There was a play with, was it right before the half? There was a
yeah,
loose ball foul called on Kia Nurse
yeah,
that clearly, well, first of all, it was pretty controversial that it was even called a foul because
yeah,
they let a lot more contact go by offensive players. Kia
yeah,
kind of shouldered into Aaliyah Boston a little bit as she was driving across the lane to try to create space to get her shot off. But she made the contact while she was gathering for the shot. And so if you're going to call something, it's an offensive foul, if anything, but 99% of the time, no ref's calling that an offensive foul. So first of all, it was shocking that they called a foul, but then secondly, that they called it a loose ball foul and Indiana got free throws out of it was ridiculous. I mean,
yeah.
clearly
She was
we're
clearly taking a shot.
yeah, I mean, it was just one of the worst calls I've seen. Well, in that game anyway. I mean, I think you get a lot of bad calls in the WNBA, but that was just by rule. It's
Yeah,
not a
I was
loose ball
surprised
foul.
Chicago didn't challenge that, but
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know what that ref was thinking and why another official didn't come over and help that official out and say, no, that was yeah, it's a foul, but it's in the shooting motion. It's Indiana ball out of bounds. It was just one of the strangest calls I've seen this season. So, all right. Well, just another thing, I wanted to touch on today was just some news and notes around the league, and maybe the biggest one is just what happened to Vandersloot last night.
yeah, that's unfortunate. It looked like a non-contact she was driving in, and Erie was right there next to her, but there wasn't any contact. She just went down. So non-contact knee injuries are never good. So we're hoping for the best for her, but it doesn't look promising for sure.
Yeah,
And then that puts Chicago in a tough place. They've kind of, I don't know that's another, what were they thinking? The front office for Chicago has been a hot mess for quite some time. They kind of traded away their future to try to get some vets in and win now. So
Yeah.
they gave their number 3 pick to Washington for Ariel Atkins, but that ended up being Sonia Citron, and there's a good argument that it's a pretty similar player, but Citron's, 8 years younger or whatever, and on the timeline with Reese and Cardosa. They've traded away other picks. So they're in kind of a tough position where they're likely going to be very bad this season, but they don't own their draft picks.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was tough. I mean, Chicago was trying to do something, make some noise. It seemed like this year, like Indiana did, added some veterans, but
Yeah.
Chicago just didn't have the talent level. I mean,
No.
Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston are better than Angel Reese and Cardoso are. And to try to build a contending team around those two this early was seems too soon and not enough. And yeah, so yeah, thoughts for Vandersloot, praying that it's nothing serious, but yeah, a non-contact knee injury is usually like an ACL or MCL, and I'll be shocked if she's not out for the year.
Yeah.
It'll be a shock, but it was a shame. We like her a lot as a player,
Yeah.
great career, and it's just a real shame. Yeah, another news around the league is Paige. Sounds like she may be coming back after missing a
Yeah.
few games. Is she going to play today in the game?
I think she's supposed to be back today, so that's encouraging. You obviously want her to be healthy. Dallas is another team that is in a rough spot and is
Yeah,
looking to at a pretty miserable year, but at least they own their future picks.
yeah. So, maybe next week we need to have a little segment on uh, some roster construction for other teams
Yeah.
because Dallas is a team that maybe needs to think about trading Enrique.
Hmm.
And then another news and note is what's going on with Vegas after
Yeah.
that shellacking by Golden State
Yep.
yesterday.
Yeah.
So, I would, man, what is the Kia Stokes? You and I have talked about, love her as a role player, great
Hmm.
defender, seems like a great teammate.
Yeah.
But she's just like a big zero on offense for them. And
Right.
Jewel
And that's a
Lloyd,
negative ultimately. Yeah.
yeah. And Jewel Lloyd has not had a great season. So all of a sudden, you're playing 3-on-5
Yeah.
almost for the Aces. And I mean, Asia's a great player, but she hasn't been able to just carry them to wins so
No.
far, But I mean, they've only got one bad loss, but that was a
Yeah.
bad loss yesterday.
Very bad. Yeah.
And so maybe next week we need to talk about some other roster construction. At a couple other points I wanted to touch on before we talk about the coming week for the Fever. Gabby Williams, one of your favorite UConn players of
Yeah.
all time.
Yeah.
She's having a
She's
heck of a season.
very good. She's shooting almost 50% from three and on like the highest attempts of anyone who's up there for percentage. She's shooting 48% on 5 attempts, and Kayla McBride is the only one who has higher attempts and a better percentage than her. And McBride is like an elite, like one of the best three-pointer shooters in the league. So Gabby's really good. She's averaging 15 points a game. So that's she's like a perfect like number 3 option on a team. Incredible defensive player. She'll be guarding Satu and Alyssa Thomas one day, and then Jackie Young and Chelsea Gray the next day. So yeah, she's having a very good season. So that's
She
fun.
is. It is. It's a lot of fun. We loved watching her in college, and
Yeah.
the only thing that was lacking in her game was being a good outside shooter. And if
Yeah.
she's developing that, I mean, she's going to become I think, a top 10 player in the league,
Yeah.
for sure. So,
Not that she would get credit for that because defense doesn't usually get a lot of credit, but
yeah,
and in terms of effectiveness, certainly.
yeah, I agree. Well, she'll be on our top 10 list, even if
Yeah.
the ESPN writers don't vote her in the top 10.
Yeah,
And
for
then
sure.
one other note, as Hoosiers, we could just maybe spend 30 seconds talking about the Pacers game since the NBA finals are going on.
Yeah.
Another crazy comeback by the Pacers.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. He's had Haliburton has had a buzzer beating or game winning or tying shot in every series this playoffs, which is just crazy. Yeah, it's very impressive, and they're just an excellent fourth quarter team. and well balanced in general, but I think it kind of wears teams down and teams can start coasting in the fourth quarter, and the Pacers are still just going strong and chipping away.
Yeah, it was crazy. I prefer watching the WNBA or women's college to the Pacers or any NBA team. But it was I did watch part of the first quarter and then watched the last 3 minutes. Yesterday, I watched the last 3 minutes of the Pacers OKC game, and yeah, I mean the Pacers just didn't panic. They just kept
Yeah.
playing and got some threes to go down, and all of a sudden they got the ball with a chance to win the game with under 10 seconds to go, and
Yeah, I love not
Haliburton,
taking the time out there too. So hats off to the coach on that. Let them play. Don't let the defense get set.
100% love that. I think, going back to my days watching IU and Bobby Knight coaching, Bobby Knight would never call timeout in that situation. He would, he thinks all that does is give the defense a chance to get set. And, instead, the defense is scrambling and, you should know. I mean, Bobby Knight always said, you should know what to do in those situations already. You should have your team prepared. And so I loved it that they didn't call timeout. And man, I don't
Yeah,
know if OKC's really good. I don't know if the Pacers can pull it out, but this has been a crazy playoff run by them.
yeah, historical for sure.
And Halliburton goes to Fever games. So
Yeah, pretty fun.
it is
Some good
pretty fun.
synergy there between
That's right.
a lot of you see a lot of the players, Pacers at Fever games and vice versa. So that's fun.
Yes.
It's
Yeah,
a good
that
time
is,
to be an Indiana basketball fan for
it
sure.
is right now for sure. So speaking of that, a couple of games, I guess, coming up this week. You're going to have Atlanta and then they play New York. So you got your
Yeah, that's
Commissioner's
tough.
Cup game right there.
Yeah, that is a tough week for sure. So you hope Caitlin's back for that, but you also don't want to rush her back too soon. Um, and it's at Atlanta, so that's going to be a tough one to win, even with Caitlin. And then New York at Indiana again. So you hope Caitlin can be back for that one. And they played him close last time, so
They
make some free
did.
throws and could be a different
Right.
game.
That's right. So yeah. So I have you heard anything on Caitlin's
She was supposed to
timeline?
be evaluated today, I think, is what they said in the game yesterday. So hopefully there will be something soon.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for us for this week. It was a good week for the Fever. And if Caitlin can come back this week, that'd be great. And potentially two really good games, especially if Caitlin's back to see how they stack up against Atlanta and New York, obviously the best team in the league right now. And then Atlanta's been winning games, so it'll be really interesting if they can pull out a win again against them. But yeah, we'll look forward. Probably be watching a few minutes of the Pacers games as well, but not full games. I can't take a full NBA game right now. So very good. Well, thanks so much, Danielle, and we will see you next week.